afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, depending on what part of the country you're located at. This is Jasir Jamal from Texas 1031 Exchanges, located down south of the country, of course. So today what I want to go ahead and talk about is what types of 1031 exchanges are out there for you. So I know in all my videos I've been very vague by far about what the process looks like, what kind of 1031 exchanges are out there. But today I'm gonna tell you what kind of 1031 exchanges are out there that you could do. And at the same time, I'm actually going to dive deeper into what a forward exchange is and cover every little detail, you know. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I have this process drawn out for you right here. But before we go ahead and talk about this, I would like to talk about what kind of exchanges are out there. So I'm just going to end up making it like right over here. So you have a forward exchange, which is the regular one that you folks see all the time. Just selling your relinquished property and buying a bigger one, forward exchange. Then you have a reverse exchange right over here, you know. And let me tell you what that is basically. So in a reverse exchange, you basically buy your replacement property first. You can buy it with either cash or with a loan, whichever one you so desire. And then after that, when you close on it, then you go ahead and identify which property you want as your relinquished one. You sell that, you get the proceeds out of there, and then you inject it into the replacement property. If you bought the replacement property using a loan, then you're basically just going to pay down that loan. Or if you bought it with cash, what ends up happening is that we will go ahead and form an entity for you that's going to hold title to that replacement property of yours. And basically there's going to be a note between that entity and you. And on that entity that we'll form, we're going to be the 100% owners in there, the 100% members, or the 100% managers, whatever you want to call it, you know? And then that note is going to be between you and us. And then after that, when you sell your relinquished property, you inject your proceeds in there, that note is gone. So that's what a reverse 1031 exchange is. And then we have an improvements exchange. So let's talk about briefly what this is. Improvements exchange. So an improvements exchange is like, we're talking about a regular forward improvements exchange in which you go ahead and do a regular forward exchange, but the only difference is that you're going to go ahead and sell your relinquished property and you're going to buy a replacement property, and you're going to go ahead and not only buy that replacement property, but you're going to conduct some improvements on it or do some construction on it using your 1031 exchange proceeds. And all of that has to be done in like 6 months. That gets pretty tough right there, you know. But now let's get to the fourth and last one. You have reverse improvements exchanges. So let's briefly talk about what that is as well. So with a reverse improvements exchange, what happens is what usually happens in a reverse 1031 exchange. You buy your replacement property first, but you're actually going to do some construction on it or some improvements on it. So you're not only most likely going to get a loan to buy the property, you'll probably end up getting a construction loan as well, or you might end up using your cash, and there will be a note between you and that entity we formed for you. And then you're going to go ahead and sell your relinquished properties and use the proceeds from that to either eliminate the note or just go ahead and pay down the construction loan and the loan on the property, on the replacement property that you used to buy it. So that's what it is. But for the sake of today's video, we're going to focus on just forward exchanges. And I'm going to show you how exactly everything works and what the timelines look like on that. So let's talk about it real quick. Oops, I kind of erased all that. So let's try to make sure I don't erase all this. Let me go ahead and renumber that again. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. So what do we have here? So here's how a forward exchange works. Let's say you got your little relinquished property right up here and you reach out to us about 2 weeks in advance, which is what we prefer. And you let us know that, hey, Jasir, we want to go ahead and sell this relinquished property of ours and go ahead and buy a bigger one right over here. So let's say the property you're selling is worth $200,000 and you have about $100,000 in debt on it. So basically, just as an estimate, you'll probably end up getting like $100K in proceeds. This is not including all the settlement charges on the closing statements. On the closing statement you will pay and you'll have something left. But for the sake of this example, we're just going to use $100K in proceeds. So we're just going to go ahead and get involved, and we're going to have you sign these 4 documents. Or actually, no, this is not really going to be signed, but you're basically going to sign these ones right here. So the first document you're going to sign is an exchange agreement, which is basically basically an agreement in which it addresses our obligations as the facilitator of the 1031 exchange and the qualified intermediary, and it addresses your responsibilities as a taxpayer and as the exchanger. That's what that is, basically. Then you have the assignment of contract, in which you, as the seller of this relinquished property, are going to go ahead and assign your interest in that contract to us as the 1031 exchange company. Why do you ask? Because you as a seller, you received earnest money from the buyer for this property. So that earnest money is not supposed to go to you, it has to go to us. And on paper, we need to show all the money came to us in order for the 1031 exchange to be successful, you know? Like I said before, if that money hits your account, then the 1031 exchange is a fail and you will be taxed on that. Therefore, it always needs to be within our hands while you're doing the 1031, you know? And then you have the notice of relinquished property, which is basically just a notice we will give the buyer for this property saying that, look, you're going to be doing a 1031 exchange on this property and it's the relinquished one. Not a big deal. You're just going to sign it, and we have a signature block at the bottom for the buyer to sign as well. And we would prefer to for both parties to sign and just have it on record. And then lastly, we have closing instructions, which is more so for the title company. So what happens is that in these closing instructions, we will usually let the title company know that, look, this is a 1031 exchange, of course, and this is how they need to structure the HUD statement, basically. So here you go. You're the seller right over here, and here's the buyer. The buyer has his or her set of expenses, and you have your set of expenses on here, but then here comes the key part. Over here at the bottom is the amount of money that will be due to you as the seller when, you know, the buyer pays what they need to pay, and this is the amount of money that goes in your pocket. Over here, we are going to show that as $0. Why? Because once again, we're trying to show that you never got that money. That money came directly to us, which in this case, that's exactly what's going to end up happening. So basically, we're going to show a $0 right at the bottom of the HUD statement on your side, and you and the buyer are going to go ahead and sign the HUD statement. Everything is good, but then at the bottom, we'll have a signature slot in which we are actually going to end up signing the HUD statement at the bottom, saying that we approve of it and everything works well. And then when it's time to close, we're going to send the title company our wiring instructions for the new escrow account we just created for you. And they're going to wire the money over there. And your 100K is going to come straight over to an escrow account that we have created for you under your name. And we're just going to go ahead and hold those funds for you while you're, you know, in your 1031 exchange period. So as soon as you close on this relinquished property of yours, your whole 1031 exchange 180-day timeline starts ticking. Or not timeline, but like, you know, you get the idea. Timeline doesn't tick, basically the clock is ticking. So of course you have 45 days to go out there and identify up to 3 or multiple replacement properties. And basically then you have 135 days to close on at least one of those replacement properties. And here's how it's going to go. Before the 45 days end, like well before the 45 days end, and basically we're going to give you a designation form, I'm just going to call it that, in which you're basically going to write down what properties you intend on purchasing as your replacement properties. And you need to fill that form out and turn it over to us. Just make sure that that form is turned over to us by the midnight of on the 45th day. The midnight of the 45th day. It needs to be turned over to us. And then we'll keep moving forward from there. Then after that, you have 135 days, as I mentioned, to go ahead and close on at least one of those properties. And then when the time comes to close, this is how it's going to play out. So for the sake of this example, as I mentioned, we're holding about 100K for you in escrow. Sweet. And over here, you just bought a property of 400K right over here. So if you're most likely going to get a loan on this, so if you get a loan, you'll get a $300,000 loan and you'll use the 100K over here to make the down payment for the loan. Everything's good. But now, just as a side note, I do want to address if the down payment was higher, if it was like 200K, we're going to use your proceeds and throw it straight towards the down payment, you know, and you can come up with the extra 100K to go ahead and make the down payment. There's no problem with that. It's perfectly fine. So after that, of course, when it comes time to close, we're going to make you sign two things actually. An assignment of the contract in which, you know, you got into contract with the seller for this property, you deposited earnest money, we need to get that contract assigned over to us as the qualified intermediary / facilitator, and we're going to show that we deposited the earnest money for you. You know how that works. And then a notice of replacement property, a form we're going to send over to the seller that you are going to sign, and the seller will sign at the bottom saying that, hey, this is a replacement property for a 1031 exchange. No big deal, you know? And then the closing instructions, and well, this is more so for the title company. And what ends up happening here is that, you know, here's the HUD statement right over here. And basically, you know, you have the buyer's set of expenses and the seller's set of expenses, no problem. But over here on the buyer's set of expenses, we need to make sure that our name, Texas 1031 Exchanges, is down here. And it shows that we are going to be dispersing 100K from your escrow account onto this property, and we're going to inject it there. Then, of course, you and the seller are just going to go ahead and sign the HUD statement and everything, and basically we're going to end up signing the HUD statement as well at the bottom, like on the second page or wherever, and everything will move forward from there. And then when it's time for the closing to happen, we're going to go ahead and wire this 100K over to the title company, and they're just going to go ahead and fund the file, and your 1031 exchange is done. And then, of course, in our closing instructions, we'll let the title company know that, hey, provide us with the signed HUD statement, all these signed documents right here, and everything looks good, and your 1031 exchange is done, basically. Then after that, we're basically going to send you like a little bank statement, because at the end of the year, when you file your Form 8824, your CPA is gonna need to see a bank statement that they can use in order to prove to the IRS that a 1031 exchange happens. It's just there for extra proof, just in case, you know. So we're just gonna go ahead and do that. But in the meantime, that's it for me today, folks. I really hope I was able to break this down in a more understandable way, and you guys understood the process of how a forward exchange works. And I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this, of course. But until then, if you folks have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me. You know how to find me. And until then, see you next time.